Hi, everybody, and welcome back to Trudge, A Journey to Being Recovered. My name is Dexter. I am a recovered drug addict alcoholic. Hope everyone is doing well. I got very busy last week. I had a very convoluted week, and I was not able to get a submission out. So 2 weeks later, here I am. I apologize to those of you who are following, but today, here I am, and we are going to finish up the chapter called A Vision to You today. And then we have one more chapter, Dr. Bob's Nightmare, and that will finalize the program. Hope everybody is enjoying their spiritual awakening, out there helping other people, looking for, ways to be of service, living altruistically and spiritually. When we last left off, we were on page 158, and we were talking about Bill Dotson, AA number 3, and the story that, the man on the bed, the picture that is in most AA meetings, where Dr. Bob and Bill W. are relating their 12-step story, their experience to him. They're giving him a treatment for alcoholism, and we finished off where Dr. Bill Dotson is having his spiritual awakening, and grabbing his clothes out of the hospital, which he had been in 8 times in the last 6 months with his wife, and leaving after having accepted what Bill and Dr. Bob have told him, and he never drank again. So that's going to be on page 158. It's going to be the last paragraph that's highlighted. It is POY orange. Orange for important notes for those of you who have been doing this with me from day one. Let's go ahead before we get started and invite God in with our 3rd step prayer. For those of you who care to join, it's on page 623. It's highlighted pink. Pink is for prayers for those of you who have been doing this work with me from day one. And welcome to our new people. We are happy that you are watching, and hopefully some of this will resonate and be helpful to you or to someone that you may know. So let's take a second, invite God in, and get right to work. God, I offer myself to Thee, to build with me and to do with me as Thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, that I may better do Thy will. Take away my difficulties, that victory over them may bear witness to those I would help of Thy power, Thy love, and Thy way of life. May I do Thy will always. Thanks to those of you who joined in, and let's get right back to business. So, in the middle of the page, on page 158, it says, in reference to Bill Dotson, that afternoon, he put on his clothes and walked from the hospital a free man. Free man is going to be highlighted orange, and it's going to be underlined. So at that point, he's having the beginning of his spiritual experience. He's no longer bound to alcohol, okay? He entered a political campaign, making speeches, frequenting men's gatherings, places of all sorts, staying up all night. He lost the race by only a narrow margin. This next sentence is going to be highlighted orange. It says, but he had found God, and in finding God, he had found himself. And boy, I can relate to that, because I never really knew who I was, Until I worked these steps and had a spiritual experience, I never understood what was comfortable, with me, what I really liked, the bottom line is, I was a follower, and I never had any sense of self. If you didn't like somebody, I didn't like them either. I never really was able to think for myself, and I can absolutely relate to Bill Dotson finding himself as the result of having his spiritual experience. That was June of 1935. He never drank again, so this is a man who, many times upon leaving the hospital would go get drunk, has a spiritual experience after a few meetings with 2 recovered alcoholics, accepts what they're saying, turns his will and his life over to the care of God as he understood God. This guy worked, the first couple steps in a hospital bed, left the hospital, never drank again. You can't tell me that this doesn't work. Now some people's spiritual awakenings aren't happening that quickly, but they're happening. This is not made up stuff. The man never drank again. A violent, belligerent alcoholic, one of the worst alcoholics in history, never drank again. So, he too has become a respected and useful member of his community. He has helped other men recover, and that's important. I can't believe I don't have that highlighted orange. Let's go ahead and highlight. He has helped other men recover and is a power in the church for which he was long absent. Now, I think helping others is of paramount importance. We've talked about this on every video submission I've made, and I think it definitely needs to be spoken of. So you see, there were 3 alcoholics in that town who now felt they had to give to others what they had found or be sunk. And that part of the second part of that sentence, had to give to others what they found or be sunk, is going to be highlighted orange. Just reiterating that we only get to keep what we have by giving it to other people. Time and time again in the big book, it speaks to nothing being a better outlet for staying recovered than working with another drug addict or another alcoholic. It works when other things fail. After several failures to find others, a 4th turned up. He came through an acquaintance who had heard the good news. He proved to be a devil-may-care young fellow whose parents could not make out whether he wanted to stop drinking or not. So I guess like a devil-may-care type fellow nowadays would be like a Billy Badass, like the rotten apple of the bunch, the bad seed, the guy that just no one, ever thinks is going to, not continue to cause pandemonium and ruckus wherever he goes. He's that guy. Nowadays it's referred to as that guy. He was that guy. His name was Ernie G. He was the number 4 alcoholic, okay? It goes on to say, they were deeply religious people, much shocked by their son's refusal to have anything to do with the church. He suffered horribly from his sprees, but it seemed as if nothing could be done for him, okay? He was just of the hopeless variety, just like the men who, preceded him. He consented, however, to go to the hospital, where he occupied the very room vacated by the lawyer, Bill Dotson. He had 3 visitors, and I'm assuming those 3 visitors were Bill, Bob, and Bill D. After a bit, he said, "The way you fellows put this spiritual stuff makes sense. I'm ready to do business. I guess the old folks were right after all." So 1 more was added to this fellowship. At this time, our friend of the hotel lobby incident remained in that town. So Bill W., he stays there, okay? He hangs out with Dr. Bob, Bill D, Ernie G, and furthers this cause. He does not head back home to Lois. He was there for 3 months, okay? He spent 90 days. He now returned home, leaving behind his first acquaintance, the lawyer, and the devil-may-care chap, okay? So without even knowing it, they had built up, the beginnings of Alcoholics Anonymous in Akron. They did his work there and then returned back home. This is going to be highlighted orange. This whole next sentence, 2 sentences, it says, these men had found something brand new in life. Though they knew they must help other alcoholics, and let's go ahead and circle the word must, if they would remain sober, that motive became secondary. It was transcended by the happiness they found in giving themselves to others. So, helping others is the way to go. We can only keep what we have by giving it away. But it's transcended by the fact that we actually enjoy helping other people. I enjoy doing this. I enjoy giving of myself. I enjoy knowing that maybe one day there may be a person out there that is listening to what I'm saying that may actually have a spiritual experience and get well the way it was given to me. There's nothing that makes me happier. My favorite thing to do in this world is work with other people out of this book. There's nothing more. There's a lot of stuff I like to do. I love to watch football. I love to eat. I love to travel. There's just nothing like seeing the light go on for other people, and that's why I do it. And so that's what they're speaking to there. While becoming recovered and staying recovered is dependent on working with other people, it's almost secondary to the enjoyment that we're talking about getting out of it, okay? They shared their homes, their slender resources, and gladly, the word gladly is going to be circled, and the rest of that sentence is going to be highlighted orange. So they gladly devoted their spare hours to fellow sufferers. I gladly do this. It's not a chore to me. To me, it's a priority. Most of the time I make the submission. I absolutely enjoy doing it. Why? Because this type of 12-step work is what's keeping my frame of mind of being recovered. Living altruistically, it's working. It has worked. It continues to work. And until I see it stop working, I'm going to give of myself to other people. They were willing, by day or night, to place a new man in the hospital and visit him afterward. They grew in numbers. They experienced a few distressing failures, but in those cases, they made an effort to bring the man's family into a spiritual way of living. I have the words family into a spiritual way of living, highlighted orange, because it's just as important that the family understands as the person in question. It could be beneficial to both. This work, this way of living, has its advantages for all people, thus relieving much worry and suffering. Okay, and what could be better than that? After the degradation and depression and despair that many of these families, as well as the alcoholic in question, have suffered through, what could be better than a little relief? A year and 6 months later, these 3 had succeeded with 7 more. Okay, so 18 months later, they now were up to 10. Seeing much of each other, scarce an evening passed that someone's home did not shelter a little gathering of men and women happy in their release. Second part of this is going to be highlighted orange. It says, and constantly thinking how they might present their discovery to some newcomer. I mean, that's so important. It's like, what can we do to get this out there to the new person walking in the room who really wants to stop, who really wants to live a different way of life? I remember when my sponsor was going over this work with me, I hadn't really heard too much of like this kind of program out of the book. I mean, a lot of people just aren't talking about that kind of thing in meetings, and I remember just kind of feeling alone. Shortly thereafter, I started working with a man who had a spiritual awakening, who worked with a man who had a spiritual awakening, who's working with a man who's having a spiritual awakening, I believe, and another group of people. I've worked with about 10 people to this point. It's taken for maybe 3 or 4 or 5 of them, almost 2.5 years later, there's maybe 10 of us right now. It's almost the same type of thing that happened to Bill, Bob, Bill D, and Ernie happening in my life. And this can happen in your area, wherever you are. Having a spiritual experience and enjoying the promises in this book, are not tantamount to just being sober. You can have both, is what I'm saying, and I find that things that happened in the late 1930s, it equates very much to kind of what's happening for me now and several other people in the year 2014. So, in addition to these casual get-togethers, it became customary to set apart one night a week for a meeting, and the word meeting is going to be highlighted orange, to be attended by, and this is also going to be highlighted to the end of the sentence, anyone or everyone interested in a spiritual way of life. This, my friends, is why meetings were created. Okay, this is the birth of meetings. There's a million meetings going on since the dawn of, it's how they've grown, the types of meetings. But why meetings were created? This is why. They were created for anyone and everyone interested in a spiritual way of life. I mean, this contradicts like the blue card. I don't know if anyone's has any experience with the blue card that's sometimes read at the beginning of some meetings. It's kind of like a closed meeting thing, I mean, this is telling you, period, point blank, why meetings were created. If you're looking for a spiritual way of life, I mean, you should be welcome, but things have changed over time, and it is definitely not what it used to be. I will go ahead and say that. It goes on to say, aside from fellowship and sociability, and fellowship and sociability are highlighted orange, the prime object, okay, the most important object, the word prime, circled, highlighted orange. The prime object was to provide a time and place where new people might bring their problems. New. The word new, circled and highlighted orange, where new people, where newcomers could bring their problems. So me, I've been going to meetings for almost 13 years, 14 years, it's like, I used to go into meetings and sit on a pity pot, wasting people's time. It's like, how dare I go in there, and try to inconvenience people with some trivial things that are going on in my life, when meeting places are an area to provide the hope, to share the hope and the power of God, and talk about the steps and how they've brought me to a spiritual experience, so other people, so new people too, can have that happen to them. When you don't know any better, you're trying to stay sober, 1 minute at a time. Some people couldn't even do that. That's the place for the new people to learn. If they need to bring their problems there, we allow them to do that. But we also share the hope and the power, give them something wonderful to hang on to, so they want to come back. If we don't share the good, what's going to keep them coming back? If we're just all in there sharing, the pity party and how life sucks without alcohol and drugs, I mean, we are going in direct contradiction to what this program was really set up to do. Outsiders became interested. One man and his wife placed their large home at the disposal of this strangely assorted crowd. This couple has since become so fascinated that they have dedicated their home to the work. Many a distracted wife has visited this house to find loving and understanding companionship among women who knew her problem, to hear from the lips of their husbands what had happened to them, to be advised how her own wayward mate might be hospitalized and approached when next he stumbled. So, I mean, these homes, I mean, this was like learning centers for not only the alcoholic in question, but for the wives, supporting and dealing with these alcoholic men. I mean, there was so much information being passed around on how to get well, how to stay well, what you could do to be helpful to the next person. It was tremendous. I would have loved to have been a fly on the wall at the inception of some of these meetings. It's tremendous. I mean, it's AA history that has worked for years, for decades, for whoever does it. Okay? Many a man, yet dazed from his hospital experience, has stepped over the threshold of that home into freedom. The word freedom is going to be highlighted orange. And I believe it's not just freedom from alcoholism. I think it's more about freedom from the bondage of self. Many of us stop drinking, stop drugging, and we transfer our addictive, mindset into other things. You can be free from all of that. I've spoken about a lot of my history throughout the programs and the submissions that I've made, how, I just don't feel bound to any of that stuff anymore. When I find myself going in that area, of all of a sudden kind of wanting to, do some of the things that I used to do, I have a solution that works every time. And it's called helping other people. It's called the power of God. It's called living the steps, using the spiritual principles that are embodied in our steps to stay well. Many an alcoholic who entered there came away with an answer. He succumbed to that gay crowd inside, who laughed at their own misfortunes and understood his. There's nothing better than being in a meeting and being able to share openly, about some of the things that you're going through or having gone through, and having other people understand. It's one of the most tremendous parts of AA and all recovery gatherings, okay? You're no longer alone. Impressed by those who visited him at the hospital, he capitulated entirely when later, in an upper room of the house, and I have the word upper room highlighted and underlined, a lot of these meetings took place upstairs, while the wives a lot of times were downstairs in the kitchen. He heard the story of some man whose experience closely tallied with his own. It's said in meetings a lot of times, if you stick around long enough, you're going to hear someone else tell your story. Something very similar to that. That has happened to me several times. The expression on the faces of the women, that indefinable something in the eyes of the men, the stimulating and electric atmosphere of the place conspired to let him know that there was haven at last. Finally, there's a place where you can feel comfortable, where you can go, where you can get help, and those places still exist today. They might definitely be a lot different than they used to be, but God bless the fact that our predecessors had done enough to get this program started, that we today still have these meeting rooms, these gathering places where we can go and find other people who have recovered, who understand. The very practical approach to his problems, and those are the steps, okay? The absence of intolerance, and I have absence of intolerance. I have that highlighted orange. That's something that I still struggle with. A lot of people struggle with being intolerant. Absence of intolerance of any kind, the informality, the genuine democracy, the uncanny understanding which these people had were irresistible. Okay, the word irresistible is going to be underlined and highlighted orange. It's irresistible. It tells you that it was that good to find what this person was finding. He and his wife would have elated by the thought of what they could now do for some stricken acquaintance and his family. The words now do for, going to be highlighted orange. Again, what can we do? We've gotten well. We understand. Let's find someone to give this gift to, so they too can be saved, be recovered, have their lives changed. They knew they had a host of new friends. It seemed they had known these strangers always. The word always is going to be highlighted orange. They have seen miracles, and one was to come to them. They had visioned the great reality, their loving and all-powerful creator. For me, I just happen to call that God. That works for me. Okay, so there's a lot of AA going on here. There's a little sprinkle of Al-Anon, the birth of Al-Anon with the wives, and the families, all kind of coming together all at the same time during the inception of this one, this great program. We go from 3-4 men to 10, and all of a sudden there was over 100 people, and men and women opening up their homes for gatherings, for the wives to talk about the problems, for the men to talk about the problems, and then for them both to come to the common solution, which was the spiritual experience. Now, this house will hardly accommodate its weekly visitors, for they number 60 or 80. I have 60 or 80 highlighted orange. So, these meetings grew, and they grew quickly. It's like putting gasoline on a fire. They grew out of control. As a rule, 60 or 80 as a rule, excuse me. And a lot of these people, they met there for over a decade. 10, 15 years they were meeting at these places, okay? Alcoholics were being attracted from far and near. From surrounding towns, families drove long distances to be present, okay? They were doing the same kinds of things that they were willing to do for alcohol and drugs. They were now doing it to make these meetings, to be present, okay? To get that solution, all right? A community 30 miles away has 15 fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous. That's tremendous at that point. When you think it took 18 months to go from 3 to 10, all of a sudden, now we're looking at other communities sprouting up, AA meetings all over the place. The inception of what Bill D, and Ernie G did, they left lasting marks on different communities in different cities. Before you know it, Alcoholics Anonymous, the program, the big book, was blowing up, and it was everywhere, okay? Being a large place, we think that someday its fellowship will number many hundreds. If only they knew, what they had stumbled upon. Cleveland, Akron, New York, though that was the beginning. In 2014, Alcoholics Anonymous is everywhere. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of meetings all over the globe. Tremendous. But life among Alcoholics Anonymous is more than attending gatherings and visiting hospitals. There's more to it than that, okay? Cleaning up old scrapes, steps 4 through 9, okay? Getting your own house in order. Helping to settle family differences, explaining the disinherited son to his irate parents, lending money, and securing jobs for each other. When justified, these are everyday occurrences. These are the types of things that were commonplace back then. Now, so much, maybe not so much lending money and things like that. Times have changed, but these are still commonplaces to go out of your way to be helping other people. Help the next man up, okay? You've gotten well, help the next man up. No one is too discredited or has sunk too low to be welcomed cordially if he means business. If that person is serious, absolutely welcome him or her with open arms. Social distinctions, petty rivalries, and jealousies, these are laughed out of countenance. I put all that stuff aside, man. This person is dying and wants help, Are you willing to do that? It's very easy sometimes to forget that we used to be just like some of those people that we may dislike who are looking for help. This next paragraph is going to be highlighted orange. It says, being wrecked in the same vessel, being restored and united under God. God is underlined, the God of your understanding, with hearts and minds attuned to the welfare of others. The things which matter so much to some people no longer signify much to them. How could they? It's like, how could you have that same old school mindset that you had when you were out there active in your addiction or drinking? It's like, this is altruism at its finest. One man helping another. It's absolutely magical to think that this is how this program, came to fruition. Under only slightly different conditions, the same thing is taking place in many eastern cities. In one of these, there is a well-known hospital for the treatment of alcoholic and drug addiction. 6 years ago, one of us, our one of our number was a patient there, excuse me. Many of us have felt for the first time the presence and power of God. I have the presence and power of God highlighted orange within its walls. And this is talking about, Bill W.'s story and Dr. Silkworth, in Towns Hospital. We are greatly indebted to the doctor in attendance there, for he, although it might prejudice his own work, has told us of a belief in ours. And that's the doctor's opinion that's located in the beginning of the big book. Okay, without Dr. Silkworth, we could only have made the slowest of progress. We absolutely needed somebody with those kind of credentials to get on board and help us. And God bless Dr. Silkworth. Every day, this doctor suggests our approach to one of his patients. Understanding our work, he can do this with an eye to selecting those who are willing and able to recover on a spiritual basis. A spiritual basis is going to be highlighted orange. That's the crux of the program, okay? Many of us, former patients, go there to help, that giving back. Then, in this eastern city, there are informal meetings, such as we have described to you, where you may now see scores of members. There are the same fast friendships. There is the same helpfulness to one another as you may find among our Western friends. There is a good bit of travel between East and West, and we foresee a great increase in this helpful interchange. Okay, talking about everyone's just helping each other now. Okay, this thing is really blowing up. Someday we hope that every alcoholic who journeys will find a fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous at his destination. And 90% of the time, if you're looking somewhere in the world, you'll find it. To some extent, this is already true. Some of us are salesmen and go about. Little clusters of 2s and 3s and 5s of us have sprung up in other communities. Though contact with our 2 larger centers, those of us who travel drop in as often as we can. This practice enables us to lend a hand, at the same time avoiding certain alluring distractions of the road, about which any traveling man can inform you. Thus we grow, and so can you. That's going to be highlighted orange, and that's kind of what's happening here. We're just growing at a slow rate, but we're growing. People are understanding that there's more to this program than just the absence of alcohol. And people are wanting to get well and are reading this book and being taught this book by men and women who have recovered and want to stay recovered. And it is absolutely a tremendous thing to watch, and it's an unbelievable thing to be a part of. And I feel absolutely so blessed that I've been chosen by the God of my understanding to have a hand in it, and I want no accolades. I want no commandeering. I don't want any, blowing up on my ego. I'm just so grateful that I have the life I have today because of what I've been taught and following what's written meticulously in the pages of this book, especially in this chapter. So thus we grow, and so can you, though you be but one man with this book in your hand. I'm just one person, I'm just one man with this book. We believe and hope it contains all you will need to begin. And the word all is circled, and it does. Obviously having someone to teach this book, formulating a relationship with a higher power is absolute paramount importance. There's no question about it. But this is really all you need to make a beginning is some willingness, this book, and you can go far. You really can. So we know what you were thinking. You were saying to yourself, and this is going to be highlighted orange. It says, I'm jittery and alone. I couldn't do that. But you can. You can, okay? You forget that you have just now tapped a source of power much greater than yourself. See, POIVIP, page 43, I believe. It's like, look, lack of power, that was our dilemma, okay? We have that power now, okay? You have that power to be helpful to other people. It says to duplicate with such backing, what we have accomplished is only a matter of willingness, patience, and labor. I have those 3 words highlighted orange. Willingness, patience, and labor. I had willingness, I had patience, and labor when it came time to getting drugs, getting alcohol, chasing skirts. Like, I can have it now. Because the life that I've been given as the result of having these things and living this way has been far better than any day I ever had when I was doing those other things. It's not even close. It's not even comparable, okay? We know of an AA member who was living in a large community. He had lived there but a few weeks, and when he found that the place probably contained more alcoholics per square mile than any city in the country, and we just talk about New York, okay? This is only a few days ago, at this writing, since 1939. The authorities were much concerned. He got in touch with a prominent psychiatrist who had undertaken certain responsibilities for mental health of the community. The doctor proved to be able and exceedingly anxious to adopt any workable method of handling the situation. So he inquired, what did our friend have on the ball? And our friend had steps 1 through 12. He had the solution. Our friend proceeded to tell him, and with such good effect that the doctor agreed to test among his patients and certain other alcoholics from a clinic which he attends. Arrangements were also made with the chief psychiatrist of a large public hospital to select still others from the stream of misery which throws through that institution. So they had all the people they needed to do this work right there. It was just a matter of implementing this 12-step model to these suffering people, okay? So our fellow worker will soon have friends galore. Some of them may sink and perhaps never get up. I have the word sink underlined and never circled. I mean, it may happen. Not everyone gets this, okay? Not everyone's willing to do the work. But if our experience is a criterion, more than half, and I have the words more than half highlighted orange, more than half of those approached will become fellows of Alcoholics Anonymous. When a few men in this city have found themselves and have discovered the joy of helping others, I have the joy of helping others highlighted orange, to face life again, there will be no stopping. I have the words no stopping highlighted, and that's how I feel. There's going to be no stopping me, okay? Until everyone in that town has had his opportunity to recover if he can and will. And that's how I feel, man. Look, if you're willing to do that work, the opportunity is here. I will die trying to help the next alcoholic, the next drug addict, arrest this disease and become recovered, because I cannot forget the people who helped me. Still, you may say, but I have not the benefit of contact with you who write this book. We cannot be sure. The rest of this paragraph is going to be highlighted orange. It says God will determine that. So you must remember that your real reliance is always upon him. The word always circled, okay? Remember, this is not about another human being. This is about leaning on our higher power, which we have cultivated as we've worked this step, okay? He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. This is all about your relationship with God. Our book is meant to be suggestive only. The word suggestive is going to be highlighted orange. Okay, you take it or leave it. You don't have to do this, all right? We realize we know only a little. God, highlighted orange, will constantly disclose more to you and to us. This is not about anyone or anything. This is about your relationship with your higher power, okay? This is going to be highlighted pink. Pink stands for prayers. I do this every day. Ask him in your morning meditation what you can do each day for the man who is still sick. Every morning I ask God to put me in a position to help somebody else. Why? Because not only am I helping them, I get to stay recovered by helping myself. This is how the program came up. This is how it was formulated. There's no need to recreate it. I do it today. I get to continue to have the wonderful life that I have now, free of the bondage of self and of active addiction to anything, mind, mood altering, or otherwise. This is going to be highlighted orange. It says, the answers will come if your own house is in order. But obviously you cannot transmit something you haven't got. So if your own house isn't in order, there's no way you're going to be able to give in this capacity, And if you haven't had a spiritual experience, you can't teach how to have one. If you haven't worked the steps, you can't show someone how to work the steps. There's quite a few people out there. I was one of them with, double-digit years of sobriety, of clean time, trying to show other people how to get well. And there's things you can do to show people how not to use that substance and to have that companionship and that fellowship, but to no human power, if that person's placed beyond human aid, can guarantee that person will stay sober or stay clean. It must come from a power greater than themselves. Next sentence is going to be highlighted yellow. These are promises. You see to it that your relationship with him is right. Right is underlined. Your relationship with your higher power must be right. And great events will come to pass for you and countless others. This is the great fact for us. Great fact is going to be underlined, and this has been my experience. This has been the experience of thousands of recovered alcoholics throughout history. The last paragraph of page 164 states, it's like the culmination of everything we have done to this point. This is like the last scene of like the Shawshank Redemption. This is like the best part of the movie. Abandon yourself to God as you understand God. Admit your faults to Him and to your fellows. Clear away the wreckage of your past. Give freely, the word freely is circled. Give freely of what you find and join us. We shall be with you in the fellowship of the Spirit, and you will surely meet some of us as you trudge. The word trudge is going to be underlined, and I just love this word, which is why I named the program after it. To walk with a purpose, okay? Trudge the road of happy destiny. May God bless you and keep you until then. And that, my friends, concludes A Vision for You. If I had to sum up this chapter in just a couple words, it would just be trust God, clean house, and help others. When you do that, you cannot fail. And so that's the first 164 of the book. Most people believe that's the whole program, and it is. And that's where most people would stop. At this point, this is my sponsor said, off comes the training wheels. I was already sponsoring at this point, but our relationship became more about me relying on God and not on calling in all the time. And we still talk quite a bit, but it's not anything like, the neediness that I, displayed in reference to just getting through the day, having to make a phone call 4 or 5 times a day. I relied on God with everything that I have at this point, and I stopped and started to show other people how to do that, rather than try to rest on my own laurels and teach people that they can do this all themselves. All they have to do is, be mentally strong. Our book speaks nothing to any of that. And so I read Dr. Bob's Nightmare with my sponsees because I believe that we would only have made a certain amount of progress without Dr. Bob Smith. Obviously when Bill was about to go back into that bar, where that gay crowd was, it's basically calling his name, 6 months of sobriety, and the alcohol is calling, he called and met Bob, and this is how this thing took off. And I believe that his story needs to be told. I think, every Batman needs a Robin. And I think Dr. Bob's story is underrated, and we go over it. We definitely read it. And so that will be the last chapter of Trudge, A Journey to Being Recovered. We will do that next week. I don't think we'll do it in its entirety. We'll maybe break it up into 2. I kind of have a lot less highlighted for his story, but it's still worthy of doing. And it's 9 pages. We might try to bang it out all at once. And then I will finish the program with a concluding episode or submission of, what I feel like we have tried to accomplish here with the program. A couple other things I want to throw out there, to people who are viewing. And, that will be it. At which point I will now look for another outlet to be of service outside of regular sponsorship, meeting attendance, and things and the like. So I hope everyone's well. Things with me are great. I'm accomplishing big things, and I feel like the